co-presenter, John Porter. I will now introduce him to all of you. John Porter is a sailor athlete, a fabulous sailor and a great guy. He is the RAJ for Area K, and on his own time, with no prompting, created the new hearing decision form. We got permission from Peter Wilson, who is the head of our Rules Committee, to go ahead with this project and roll it out to all judges. It's been used at some events already with great success. And I think everybody's going to like it. It seems pretty easy to use. I have an iPad and John's been nursing me along. I figure if I can learn to use it, the rest of you will have no problem.
All right, vote of confidence here.
We're words. 32 in the room so far, and they're rolling in. So I think
They're rolling right in.
We're getting there.
I see Liesel, who may not be only Liesel tonight. Actually, we have two Liesels now.
That's crazy. Where's the other from?
I don't know if she's coming in under her own name or she's a married Liesel, married to another race official, and they often come together, like Kat and Dan Kulkowski do. So you get two for the price of one little box.
That seems like a pretty fair bargain.
Yes, I see many, many friends. Well, sometimes we have a limited number of boxes. Normally, as the regular attendees know, I use the US Sailing Zoom account and it's unlimited people. And we wanted to make sure tonight that we could get everybody in because I think it's real important that John walks us all through his creation. It's really good stuff.
All right, so we're pretty constant at 34 here for a minute. So should we give it a couple more minutes or should we get rolling?
Yeah, I like to start on time whenever possible, or we're training our judges to show up late. And so when it hits 7 Eastern, 6 Central, which it has according to my phone,
okay.
Oh, look at that. Here's our agenda. Thank you, John.
All right. So let's start out with, as you have feedback and you're using these forms and you find errors, which are inevitable, I put in the meeting chat a link to a forum where you can submit it, and that'll help me track it much better than just getting random emails, because then I can have it all compiled in one place. So if you have feedback along the way, one of the things that has come up multiple times already, where we have drop downs in validity and procedure, people would like check boxes, and that'll technologically work better on tablets and such. So my intention is to take the feedback thus far and run it by the judges committee meeting next week, and then pretty quickly after that have a version 2 release go up to the US Sailing site. So one of the great things about digital documents is we can make improvements as time goes on, and when we find issues we can correct them. So with that, let's take a look at standard wording. So this started out with, I'd kind of done this on my own computer for the last quad and wanted to do it in a way that I could share it this year. So after I got done with my copy of standard wording and had heard through the grapevine that World Sailing was arguing maybe they wouldn't release standard wording, sure enough, they did. So, so they released an Excel version, and I have not had time to go and reconcile every comma and every word. So the version that we sent out is something that's entirely out of me, and inevitably there will be a mistake there. But one of the things that is really tough with the big document is I didn't think there was a good table of contents that you could go through and find what you wanted. There was a whole lot of scrolling. So I built a table of contents. Right now I'm in the PDF version. So if when we get to our sample hearings, we'll have things like parties, representation of parties, and we can come down and say, this boat was represented by this person, or we decided there's a good reason to allow somebody who was not on board at the time of the incident to represent the boat. But, it goes through procedural matters, validity, protests, conclusions, through all the rules, and redress, and then finally decisions. And following the last piece, there are both long and short decisions. In general, I would use the long decision on my protest form, and I would use the short one on an online notice board. But that lets you have really good language. As you go through these, going through this exercise and getting familiar with everything, finding things like absence of parties, there's a standard wording for that, and some of the more obscure things you find in protests are really covered in the standard wording, and there's a lot to be learned about the rules and about procedure by reading through the standard wording. So, while it's a tool in the hearing, certainly, it's also a really good tool for learning your procedure. And when things get complicated, you can have a much bigger knowledge base to draw from. Or when it's complicated and you haven't looked at it, you can go and look at standard wording. Some of the things, in redress decisions, redress granted, there's some standard stuff, and Appendix A does not have redress granted on the average before the last day of racing, but the standard wording does, and I found that to be really popular, because especially in a long series like a whole summer series, you don't have a floating average on the last day. So everything gets locked in, and you can go out and race for the win. So the rule is that there's a whole lot here, and there's some stuff that's in addition to what's in the rule book that's very, very helpful. In the standard wording document, you'll see little red codes, and we'll talk about that later. These red codes, if you're in Microsoft Word on a computer, this will autofill the language into the document. So I released that on PDF. If I am working, and I have auto text working, I'll use the PDF version because the table of contents is just a simple click. The Word version, you have to hold your control key and click to get there. But in the Word version, if you're copying and pasting out of Word, something like this, if you copied and paste that out of the PDF, there's a whole lot you have to delete to get to a person. And I can say, John, and it deletes all of that automatically. And in some where there are drop downs, let's find one, where there's were or were not, it's a drop down. So if you're copying and pasting in Word, you can save a bunch of time having things where there are two choices instead of deleting something and deleting the brackets. You can choose one, and it'll drop into your wording very cleanly. So we'll come back to standard wording, but these are my own creations. Certainly use the feedback form when you find wording that you don't like. It's absolutely going to be there. In particular, I haven't found a better answer, but I'm not in love with my Rule 18 conclusions. And, I'm also not in love with the ones World Sailing did, but we can always edit this and post a new version. So, if you have suggestions, by all means, send them my way. So
as most of you know, we always had situations that the standard wording didn't quite fit our individual protests that we heard. And then as we tell you in your judge training, remember to go back and use the words out of the rules to describe your facts. Make sure that your facts support the conclusion that you put in. So as John says, they may not be completely perfect for your particular protest, but I think they're awfully good.
Yeah.
And we thank John for doing this.
So we'll start by going into the PDF form, which is the simplest of the forms. So PDF form looks a lot like the last form. Some of the magic here, if I type up here that we're in filing number 1, if I go to the next page, it automatically fills it on the second page. And, to me, that's a great time save. So I'm just not,
Yes.
it really annoys me to type data multiple times. And there's an equivalent in Word that works a little differently, but that's a big one. In the hearing, I like to have, I like to ask my people, if I put boat 1 on the left and boat 2 on the right on my form, I like to seat my people to the right and to the left, to the right and to the left. That
Yeah.
way, I mix up names. So this is really helpful to me. And I put the witnesses underneath there for the same thing so that if it's this person's witness, I know I can keep the name straight as I fill that in. And because I like that shortcut, that data also copies to the second page as well. So the reason for, you don't necessarily need the type of the boat and the person represented by duplicated, but it's really helpful to me in a hearing to have the name there while I'm typing in my facts found. So moving on to before the hearing. So each of these is on a drop down. And what I envision is we would type facts here that, so we're looking at schedule posted, having a fact somewhere that there's relevant to have a fact. That means we don't have to necessarily, if we call something invalid, we don't necessarily need to copy it all down here. We already have some facts on the first page that will withstand the test of an appeal. As we take a look at some of the things, as we move down, as we get into hailed protest at the first reasonable opportunity, when you have your mouse over it, we put in a link to a suggested question when you mouse over, which is, what did you say to inform the protestee of your intention to protest, and when did you say it? Because we don't like asking that direct leading question of, did you say protest? So there's a little bit of coaching when it gets, with the red flag. Did you make any visual signals to notify the protestee? So there's some nice hint there. And informed at the first reasonable opportunity, there's a hint there. This applies if the protestee was not in hailing distance at the time of the incident, or if the incident was an error sailing in the course, or it was not observed by the protest or in the racing area. So you don't have to open your book to see what 60.2b is. I gave you the mouse over hint. So if you just have your mouse over the box, you'll get there.
Now, John, can you show us if we look at choose an item, what our choices will be?
Yep. So most are yes, no.
Okay.
But party needs more time to prepare. It's no, or yes, we gave time, or yes, we didn't give time. We denied time. So,
okay.
If you find one that needs a not applicable, and I didn't have it, please fill out that form and let me know. Filed within the time limit. Yes, it was filed in the time limit. No, it was not filed in the time limit, or we extended the time limit.
And we can always go to those relevant facts boxes and put in, if we feel that there's not something right that we need right then that event, we can type something in. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right.
Yep. So in the fact, time limit extended, boat got to shore and filed within 5 minutes. ETL expired before they got to shore.
Okay, that looks great.
And
I'm not going to ask all the questions tonight, everybody.
Yeah.
On
We
a
have a
question,
guest reader.
Go ahead, Bill.
a question. I noticed when you started filling in all the words, the height of the space, it went horizontally, would it roll down to make another line within that rectangular area? Or does it extend out indefinitely to the right?
I think it extends indefinitely to the right. You know, in most cases, you aren't going to overflow it a lot, but
Right.
I set it up so it auto sizes the font to how much you type, which, you know, isn't the prettiest when it types, but it's a lot better than it going off the edge of the screen.
When it runs out of room, does it actually stop so you can't type anymore, so we know?
It'll just keep getting smaller forever.
Bill, it's really small.
I'll
Yeah.
know.
Thanks, Bill. Bill and I will be using this at a couple of 420 events coming up with
Yeah.
some of our other friends that are on this call. So
Yeah, and when you're in the Word document, it'll extend the cell and it'll push you into more pages. But you know that on the PDF form, if you're using the PDF form, it'll resize reasonably. Eventually, it'll overflow and it'll overflow the screen. But you know, I like having different fonts more than I like not seeing all the text on the screen when I print.
Right.
So, validity conclusions. If we go to our standard wording, you know, we could pick hail and flag and say, you know, if we're in the PDF form,
we just highlight it like that. And
yep, and then use a copy, which I use the keyboard shortcut Control C. But here in the PDF form, you'd highlight and say, vote 1 failed to conspicuously display a red flag at the first reasonable opportunity.
and it's got a nice rule site in there. That's great.
As required. One of the things that we had in the old form was there was a note to try and number things 1, 2, 3, 4. In PDF, that's incredibly manual. So I like to just put a hyphen at the beginning of each fact. I think that's plenty good as a time save. You can use automatic numbering in Word, but you know, making the note to use numbering, I like the hyphen when I'm in a PDF.
Hey,
Right.
John,
Yes,
on the PDF form, does the shortcut for the rule not work in the?
correct.
Okay,
It only works in Word.
okay.
So another new thing is procedural matters. There are, you know, lots of times when we would put a procedural, that's out from the World Sailing Forum. We didn't have it in the last form, but there's a whole lot of standard wording that's in procedure. So, you know, absence of parties.
Hey,
John,
John,
you're muted.
having trouble getting in, and I don't have his email address.
You muted yourself, John.
But we're texting, just so you know, he'll be coming.
Sorry, I don't know how I muted myself. Yeah, so procedural matters. There's all kinds of procedure stuff in the standard wording, so I put a place for it. Facts found were all familiar. Conclusions were all familiar, and decision were familiar. Protest committee, I left 3 boxes here because most panels are 3 people. If we had more, I would say chair, scribe procedural, and I would just use a comma. So I like to record scribe and procedural in who is on my forum. My hope someday is that we improve SOARs so we can track more things. And scribing is important, especially. So my recommendation is keep track of your scribe, because someday if we were able to add that functionality, we could go back and fill in where you were scribed. As you're looking for an upgrade. We have the same section for the written decision requested. So that's kind of a walk through the form. The last thing is we have a page number on here. The page number you know, we can't really overflow in the PDF, but in both the PDF and the Word document, we have a page number so you know you're holding the complete decision if you have it printed in your hand. So now let's have a little fun. So we have a mock protest that we sent around. So I'm just going to pick at random, and I'm going to say, Steve Dolan, why don't you chair this hearing and go through validity?
Okay. Let's see.
John, you're gonna play the part. You're
I'm
gonna
gonna
play the flying high skipper for
I'm gonna play
Steve, right?
I'm going to play the person who filed for flying high.
That's not it.
Okay, and who, so I think we're past introductions. We're just going to focus just on validity.
Yep.
Okay. And I understand, John, you're the skipper of B-17?
I'm the owner of B-17.
You're the owner of B-17, I see. And who is the skipper of B-17?
My son.
Your son, okay. And you are submitting this protest,
Yeah.
not your son, okay? And
Yeah.
can
Yeah, you can see on my form that, you know, I spent a bunch of money putting this boat name on the boat, and, you know, he should pay for it. He wrecked it.
I understand. And can you tell us how you informed the party that you're protesting?
Yeah, I mean, 2 minutes after he hit it, you know, he came by the pier again, and I yelled at him to do his turns.
I see. And did you do any other means of communication?
Yeah, I filed this, and, you know, when he got to shore, I demanded the $1,000, and he refused to give it to me.
Okay, isn't that nice? And I see that you filled out your form and you submitted it to the race office, and the form is stuck where I am, but, oh, here it is. You submitted it at 7:15.
Yep.
On this day of racing on the 23rd.
Yep.
And I understand, according to the form, or according to the notice of race or sailing instructions, that the protest time limit is 6:45.
Yeah, so something like that. You know, after the race got out of sight, I went over to the local restaurant and watched, and, you know, when I came back, I filed this.
Isn't that nice? Okay. My form again is stuck here. Okay, well, I understand. Okay, and I'll immediately bring in my colleagues. My colleagues have any other thoughts, concerns? Who are the members of my protest committee?
There are about 38 of you, so go ahead.
Okay, and you're all muted, so isn't that nice? So
Does
do we have a consensus on validity? You can raise your hands. Okay, I guess we have a consensus. It seems that the form was submitted late, that they didn't inform the party. And so I think the protest is invalid.
All right, so the question is, what are you going to do for a write-up? Because that's really what we're here for.
In the form, right? Okay. That's just what I did. Where's my? I can just work off yours. So posted. That's a yes. Committee members saw the incident. That's all. We're past that. Okay, so we're down to validity. He did submit in writing. Didn't file in a time limit. We'll put that comment. And he did identify the incident. He identified the boat, and he identified who was involved. Yes, he identified who was involved, so that should be a yes. He did see the incident. He was on shore. He said, okay, he described in his incident that he didn't say protest, but you said he did. You acting as him. There was a conflict.
No, I said do your turns. I didn't say protest.
Right, but even in the description, okay. Either way, both you didn't use. He didn't say the correct words, and he didn't describe it. Okay, and there was no flag.
If John has now told us he did not use the word protest, how is
Right.
that gonna influence your decision on validity?
Well, the whole thing is invalid. I mean, he filed it late, he didn't inform correcting the correct nomenclature. And you're at the dock, you're intending to race, so you need to fly a flag too.
Yep.
You need to flag.
So,
I think-
so
Our colleagues, our technical colleagues should take a look at 60.2 for us. Help Steve out here. I know some of you got your books out. Somebody 60.2 and help Steve out. I know I told you as a judge to have a really technical person look
What's
at
60, John? Tell him. You're not gonna tell him?
64.2.
60.2.
Yeah. He's gotta put
Everything's
that flag.
renumbered, as we know.
You're not gonna say anything?
Well, what I would point, if a protest concerns an incident observed by the protestor in the racing area, is this the racing area?
No,
No.
At the
Okay.
dock.
preamble to part 2.
Yes, John, thank you.
yep. But, while this seems really ridiculous, if it was not observed in the racing area, the only requirement is to inform the protestee at the first reasonable opportunity.
Right.
So the flag doesn't matter.
So John has testified that he filed the protest. And that he had some conversation with the other boat on the dock. But that did not include the word protest.
But am I required to use the word protest if it's not in the racing area?
John, I know that John Dieselman knows the answer to this, and he's,
Yeah, well, all the rules for part 2 don't apply if you're not in the racing area, so. So I
Well-
guess 14, well, I don't know whether.
I disagree. It says you are in or near the racing area, near, and you intend to race. So
10.
that's where it's true.
Because the race is
Yeah, but it's a 2-part requirement, right? It says, by reading.
But a boat not racing shall not be penalized, blah, blah, blah. So that's where it falls out.
How about, racing rule 4.1, by participating or attending and participating in an event conducted under the rules, each competitor and boat owner agrees to accept the rules. Is that super?
John, this thing is, do any of these rules apply? That we have a little threshold issue here at the beginning of part 2 that is going to have to be discussed eventually. Are these boats? The very first part says the boats are sailing in or near the racing area and intend to race, are racing, or have been racing. How are we doing on that sentence? Are they in the racing area?
I'm not sure they're even sailing. Is one of them tied up to the dock?
They're at the dock.
Well, one of them is, but the other one isn't.
What other one?
Okay, so it's not. So
You
one of
can
them.
Make it here,
Doug,
bring him out there. I
Doug,
can
you
listen to this.
can ask John that question.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Try
so I-
not on board.
if this is even something we can,
We do have a smaller one, yes.
is it in our jurisdiction?
We have one other question, which it says, a boat or committee may protest a boat, but this guy is not a boat. He's an owner. He's not
There you
actually
go.
on the boat.
Support person.
This
Yeah,
is,
but-
He's an observer.
However, we're talking about validity. Does that make it invalid? What makes it invalid?
Didn't see the.
Well, he
loop that I
doesn't
forwarded
have
to
the
you.
right to protest.
He
But-
is asking if we get late and home by
But it says the
4:40.
protest is invalid if it doesn't comply with the definition of protest,
What?
rule 60.2 or rule
It is,
60.3.
okay.
We're gonna
It
get
doesn't
over
mention
there eventually.
60.1.
Okay.
oh,
That's
So,
odd.
I'm
Well-
probably not gonna win this protest, but I don't think you can throw me out of the room on validity just because I'm a support
Okay,
person.
and that's good enough.
Watch TV.
well, it sounds like
I
John
have to listen to
first
this,
incident.
the Zoom meeting.
But
That's not,
John,
the
Yeah,
dock.
I'm trying to get just I'm downloading, like having trouble.
Okay,
The
Fred-
definition of protest,
let's hear
says-
from Fred.
an allegation made under Rule 60 by a boat or committee that a boat has broken a rule.
There you
A
go.
boat hasn't made this allegation.
Don,
A support person has.
was it
Yep.
Fred
And a
Hagedorn?
support person's not a boat.
The
Yep.
snipe regatta that we did?
Oh, no, oh, yeah.
Boat is the boat or its crew, right? Is that the correct definition, Fred?
Yep. Yeah, Fred. So you,
So
Fred, you
this
got,
is a support person.
yeah, Fred, you got exactly there. So it's invalid on that count.
Correct.
Absolutely.
Can I ask a quick question on validity?
Yes.
Okay, so if we're focused on validity and we start at the very top of the form, which is the time and date received, since we're outside of the protest window just to start with,
Yep.
isn't the protest invalid?
So I like to, so absolutely, I gave you a whole lot of reasons that this is invalid intentionally.
Correct.
And I think it's good, I believe it's good practice to not just stop at one reason, because if somebody has an argument that you got that wrong, then no harm, no foul if there's another reason. So look at all the reasons, and you want to document all the reasons why it's invalid. So
Right.
in my prescribe, I said they failed to I chose they failed to inform with it at the first reasonable opportunity. I put in, we never talked about was it serious damage or serious damage. But if it was serious, it probably isn't serious damage in my mind, but I put that in my prescribe. I put in it was not delivered within the protest time limit.
Right.
I said whether or not we're going to put in the standard wording, whether or not we're going to extend the time limit. And then I put in the conclusion for it's invalid because it does not comply with the definition of protest, which is, what we're going to pick.
60.2 and 3.
Yep.
Fred,
So,
took care of it.
Actually, you want to go with definition of protest, which is under
Correct.
definitions.
Yeah, so this standard wording has a drop down for all of those. So yeah, it would be definition of protest. But I chose the standard wording unedited when I did my prescribe. I put in all my possible standard wordings.
Yep.
Not just because in the hearing, then I can focus on asking questions. And I have a little bit of editing to do, but I can send you out of the room. Do we all agree? Do we have it all? And 3 minutes later, we can come out and we've got the answer.
Right. Some of us are newer, and I want the whole team here. We're all a giant protest committee, and yes, but we want everyone to feel free to speak up if they notice something, as everybody did. And we're not always going to have Fred with us, so start noticing things.
I did have a question, Nancy.
Yes, Betsy.
It's Betsy. Yeah. I was just wondering, so if we think that there's, say, 2 or 3 reasons, compelling reasons why the protest is invalid, is it helpful to record both of those in the final form that you send in, or is it better to just pick your very best and leave it at 1?
Put all the ones you can.
Mm-hmm. Having been on an appeals committee for quite a long time, and John's on one, and John Dieselman has been on the one out here in Massachusetts Bay for a very long time. We do see a lot of questions where the protest may not have been valid, and we don't have enough facts found on validity to make a decision. And so I would recommend, and I think John already said this, if he's given us 2 or 3 issues here to spot, and he has recorded them. And I think that would be good.
Okay.
This kind of thing could come to us as an appeals committee.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, because
Thank you.
Because
So
I'm really mad
that's
that this
my
vote name
opinion.
got scratched, and I'm going to appeal because they didn't give me my hearing.
Oh,
Yeah.
True. Okay. Thank you.
So
And
the
that's really, John already said he wants something for we think he's planning to present this to his insurance company. He hinted at that. And he seems like a pretty smart skipper, despite the fact that he's got some very odd graphics on his boat. And
Well,
the flying high here. let's hope that Dad was reasonably sober when the incident occurred.
A quick question on the, I guess, the computer
But he
aspect.
did approve. He did.
How do you save this form and label this form?
He is not a vote.
If you're using the,
Yep, so I am not a boat. So I put father of competitor up here. And then my conclusion is going to be the protest is invalid because it does not comply with the definition of protest. And, you know, so I could probably enhance this and say, not a boat here.
Yeah, we could even add a little more there. I agree.
Right.
You
Absolutely
also might
agree.
want to, one of the other questions I would have asked is, were you on the boat? And he says no, and then so we say he was not on the water.
Yeah.
Or not on the boat.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing we never discussed, you know, procedure, you know, having this in front of us, part of this is also having a procedural checklist. We never talked about conflict of interest. We didn't ask that question, but we never talked about whether it was serious damage or not, because there are some rules implications there. You know, I think that answer was probably no. But, you know, that was something else that you know, being in the forum gives you the prompt to ask about the damage. So you can make a determination if it was serious.
So John, was there any further damage? You talked about your graphic being scratched. Is there any fiberglass damage?
No.
No. And are you going to be able to continue to race in the regatta?
Yes.
Okay. And you've already told us that it's going to cost you about $1,000 to have this repainted.
Yes.
What did the boat cost you to purchase?
I don't know. About 40,000.
Thank you.
So Daryl, you had your hand up.
We just had a question. Somebody know how to
I don't
download
disagree
this.
with anything that Fred said. But I am going down a
Resident IJ.
just for just points of discussion. It's not in the racing area. Does that mean it's a requirement that somebody has to be on board? And could the boat say, this is our representative? So I agree with everything that everybody's done. I'm not trying to say they're wrong, but I'm just saying I'm thinking through. This is an odd one because it's not in the racing area.
Right.
I agree
So,
with Daryl that the
so
dock.
Daryl, if we go to my page 2, I had some
Yeah.
things pre-filled in procedural matters.
Yeah.
You know, one of them, there's a standard wording for a hearing being held online. So I put that one in. I put in a boat was represented by a person because that was pretty relevant to us. And the protest committee decided there was good reason to allow somebody who is not on board to represent. So I don't think we were going to give that permission, but there's a standard wording for that. So I put that in my prescribe.
Well, wait, our resident IJ is disagreeing with the rest of the
No,
committee.
we're not.
I think we need to-
Disagreeing. I'm just saying I would ask those questions and have a discussion with my committee. Do we accept this person as a representative of the boat, or do we say they're not a representative of the boat? So John's prescribe has answered my questions and made the point I was making.
And
So
and I agree fully with Daryl.
Yeah.
I think we should probably, as a panel, have explored that a little bit more. And with this group, who's normally reasonably talkative, make a decision there. Some might say that since the son is old enough to skipper a boat of this, I'm not sure I know what kind of boat this is, but I know it's a reasonably expensive boat. Why isn't the son representing the boat?
Right. I mean, very,
Because
very
the
reasonable
sun's
question.
high, obviously.
But Nancy, this is
Why
Christine.
is mom
I
or
go
dad
to-
representing the boat?
We didn't ask that question. I was going to say the other thing I look at is the definition of support person, which does say a parent of a competitor. That brings us back full circle, I think, to that particular topic.
We know this is a support person. Yes,
Right.
agreed, Christina.
Right. But if it's an incident not in the racing area, you know, at the Olympics, the U.S. sends Dave Perry into the protest room on redress hearings that are procedural. That's totally fine to send a support person on some things. You know, you have to, it's only for part 2 incidents that they have to have been on board.
But maybe I think the
Oh.
question being asked is, do you reverse it? Should the son have been in the room and the father could have been a witness rather than the father representing the boat? And then it's not really defined in here that
Right.
representing the boat, he was first of all, well, it does say later he wasn't on the water, but it doesn't say that he wasn't even was he racing? We don't even know that, actually, do we?
We really haven't gone through that bit, although John Dieselman drew our attention to it earlier about this boat may have been preparing to race, but I don't think the dock is the racing area. They may have intended to race, but is the dock the racing area? So if we had found it valid, would we be able to apply the rules of part 2 is one of the things that one of our judges pointed out to us, and I don't think we're in the racing area, but I'm not the only
They're not sailing either. The B-17 is tied to the pier. They're not sailing. So
Right.
preamble
It
part
says
2
right
says
in
the
the-
rules apply between boats that are sailing.
It says
Right.
right in the protest that B-17 was at the dock and B-101 had just left. So
They couldn't be sailing yet, but we could have asked John, were the boats under motor or were the boats sailing? Were they sailing away from the dock?
True.
Would be odd. Do we know what kind of boats these are yet?
Yeah, Sea
Sea
Scouts.
Scows.
Oh, they're sea scows. Of course they are. John's favorite boat.
Yep.
All
So going back to the form, the other thing I did as a prescribe, you know, obviously this was going to be invalid for lots of reasons. But I put a couple facts in just in case we, for some reason, decided it was valid. And I pre-filled Rule 10, Rule 11, the preamble to Part 2, the preamble to Part 2 with Rule 14, and I don't know, I had the Appendix F1 in there. And
So,
Yep.
so why 10 and 11?
because those were the only Part 2 rules that I thought would probably reasonably apply if we found this valid, and they weren't tied to the doc. I mean, it was I like to throw in my prescribe. I like to throw everything there because it's easy to delete one, and it's harder to dig through standard wording and find the one I'm looking for.
Okay, I like
So
that
that's
approach.
how, you know, my point here is not that was probably going to apply. It's I throw anything that is close to applying in my document when before I walk into the room if I've got time.
No, but it also gives you the opportunity to ask questions.
Right. It reminds me to, you know, what you know, if we got there, what right-of-way rule was broken, if any? Well, 10 and 11 really prompts me to look at that, and maybe it was 12, but you know, it got us into the discussion of what rule do you think could possibly apply here.
right. Remember, this is the prescribed that this sort of software or any electronic hearing decision form makes it really quick for the scribe to think about what might apply and pop it in there. And then it makes it easier, in my mind, to then go back to your facts found and make sure you've asked all the questions.
Yeah.
Because we never asked any questions about Bruce Cook says, but isn't this ERPCAS? And
Yeah.
Bruce is right. Read the second paragraph. It is an ERPCAS matter, formerly known as the coal regs, if you're as old as Bruce and I. And so when we don't fit the first paragraph, when a boat sailing under these rules meets a vessel that is not, she shall comply with ERPCAS or government right-of-way rules. And some of our roundtables, you all got to hear Ted Jones, who has a captain's license, talk about ERPCAS. And do we have enough information maybe to figure out ERPCAS? Was one of these boats backing up perhaps when she hit another boat? John, there are two boats leaving the dock.
Yep.
Tell me a little bit more about the position of these two boats as they left the dock.
All right. So I've got my bow tied to the pier at the top of the screen, and B101 backed up and tried to bear away, and he just nailed me right in the side. He didn't make the dock.
Okay. He hit you with his bow.
Correct.
Okay.
So what has to do with a race? Nothing. Right? Nothing to do with a race.
They're just exploring ideas if it were valid, which
Oh,
we all agree it isn't.
okay.
Right.
Right, we've agreed on that, but we've got a number of new people who may have some questions about how the rules apply, and this is a judge training. And we do have some very good, very senior folks, good IJs here on this call. And I want to make sure everybody understands the rules as well as understands the benefits of our beautiful form.
Yeah.
Not
So-
that I succeeded in making mine work on the iPad, but John is coaching me.
Yeah. So the last thing I put in the decision, in the Word document, I have the highlighted piece here, and I think this is something that we've left out, but there's a time limit for reopening, right? You know, especially on the last day of, you have 24 hours after the decision or the protest time limit the next day. On the last day of racing, there's a time limit. So I like to put in a standard wording, and I've got this in the Word form, that is, at what time and date did you give the decision to the competitors? And when it comes to reopening, you're not trying to back up and find that data to know if they met that time limit. So I think that's a really good standard wording to have in there. And then I pre-filled my other ones are: the protest is invalid, the hearing is closed, the protest is dismissed, and we disqualified someone. So
I asked you earlier when I looked at your prescribing how you disqualify a vote in an invalid hearing. I'm sure some of our judges are wondering about your brilliance there. And John told me that he was prescribing in case we did find it valid. But John, since we found it invalid, what would you do with point number 6?
Erase
Yeah.
it?
Make it disappear.
Erase it, yes. Point number 6 is going to go as we all look at our form and say, the competitor wants a copy. Nobody is DSQ'd, right?
Yes.
Now, we know we've got a competitor that's pretty upset about his scratched $1,000 worth of artwork. He's not going to be real happy that it's invalid, right? He wants something.
Probably want something for the insurance company.
Yeah, that's what's going on here. Being a Midwesterner, Mr. High Flying is hoping to get us to write something up about who is in the wrong. Is there anything else under ERPCAS that we can determine? John, were these boats under motor or did they have sails up?
The one that was hitting had a sail up, and they both had sails up, but one was tied to the dock and one was sailing.
One was sailing. Which one was sailing?
B101.
That's the boat that hit you.
Right.
Was under sail. And
Correct.
you recall what tack that boat was on?
Starboard.
Ah.
Doesn't
So does
matter.
B17 then become an obstruction?
Yeah, I don't know the ERPCAS well enough, and certainly I wasn't trying to get into that rabbit hole, but we can certainly go there.
I don't know it, and I guess we could call Ted and make him join us, but we won't.
Yeah.
ERPCAS generally, as I recall from our previous training, has port starboard, windward leeward, and ahead and behind. And that's why I asked if there was any backing up going on here. If the
Let's
boat
simplify
came
it. A boat underway does not hit a boat docked. So it's if you're going there.
A
Yeah,
boat
we're going
underway
there.
has to be under control.
Yes.
So the boat underway hit a boat that was docked.
Yeah.
No matter where you're at on this, you're going to end up either disqualifying the 101 or you're going to be finding this invalid. But either way, 101 is violating the rules.
Right.
So if we were in the real world, this sounds like something, the lawyer in me says this is something that the boats should both call their insurance agents as soon as possible. John especially should call his right now and talk to that person about what just happened to his boat and the fact that it's not suitable for a protest. What should happen next? This becomes a civil court matter. And so these two skippers need to talk to each other. maybe the boat owner, dad, and the skipper of that other boat.
But
And
Nancy,
since you're-
be careful, because that's not our issue.
Correct.
That is not our issue. We don't do that.
Right. We don't do that.
So what is the wording to be able to convey to the two parties at hand that this is outside our purview?
So after you find, I think after you find it invalid, you say, this doesn't fit in the racing rules. This is a matter for your insurance and the civil courts. And, good practice would be to contact your insurance agent.
I wouldn't have any problem with that personally, saying you both might want to contact your insurance agents because something happened today.
Yeah, and
And
in the
it
real world,
sounds like Mr. Wyatt is going to submit a claim.
right. I mean, I was,
So Mr. Otherbo.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because even if we found it valid and found that the one boat was wrong, we wouldn't apply a penalty.
Nothing to do with racing.
What?
Because it's not part of a race.
Right. It's not part of a race.
and it's not serious damage, so there's no penalty.
Right, it didn't prevent the other boat from racing.
Right.
No, no. No.
I think we've killed this one.
Yeah, I think so too. Let's move on. Next. Okay. So let's take a look at the word form. No. So
Back to training on the new stuff. Thanks, John.
okay. So word form. Let's start with this is a word template. So what that means is if you save it to your computer and you double click
John,
on
I have
it.
a question that we need to answer about the rules. About
Sorry,
how
Nancy.
to get this word. John sent it out when you got your link. John sent us links to both the Word and the PDF standard wording. So you can download it from there. I can't remember who that was, since I can't retain the questions.
Yep, and it's on the U.S. Sailing website under competition judges, and about 2/3 of the way down the page, all these documents are there. Okay, so the word is a word template. So what that means is if you save it to your computer and instead of using the file open dialog, if you double click on it, then when you double click on it, it shows up as a document 2 or document 1 here. So you don't kill your template when you save. If you use file open and you fill it out and you save, then you've killed your template. So you'll always get a blank form if you double click that file from your file explorer. So that's the start. So the way we duplicate the information between pages here, this is a header up here and it's grayed out. So you need to double click on this. And then when you put in filing 1, vote 17, when you double click back out, that goes to the next page.
Okay, so anything gray, we double click and then we can enter.
Right. Double click it. And
Already
then,
doing that wrong. Hey, John, I have a huge favor. Tony Weiner still can't get in. It's tony@tonyweiner.com. For some reason, I'm using every device I have and he has not received his login.
I am in, Nancy. I'm in.
You are in. Oh, I'm so happy for you, Tony.
Well, I'm happy too. It's just a wonderful Wednesday evening.
Haven't seen you for days.
It has been.
Mr. I Start.
Tony, for the beginning of this, we are recording it, just so you know. So you'll be able to go back and listen to the beginning piece.
Great. Thank you.
And we're going to get this posted because we ran out of room. We are too popular.
Yeah. Okay.
Back to John.
Same thing we had in the last form. So we double clicked in to fill out our hearing information. I pre-filled a couple facts found here, which kind of broke in the PDF if I sent it out, but in the Word it doesn't. So I put in a reminder to put the wind speed, the sea state, and the current. And a lot of things we see at appeals is, they don't really address whether somebody took a penalty on the water. So I put a standard fact in there, which obviously if somebody took a penalty, you'll change that. But it's a reminder to you to note whether somebody took a penalty and that everybody finished.
Or didn't finish.
Or didn't
Or
finish.
retired.
Yep.
Right. Good reminder.
So back up on page 1. Again, we have drop downs. Here, if we have multiple facts, we get better formatting. So if you had multiple facts,
double click. That's the secret.
Sorry, we're getting about every third word from you, Nancy.
I don't know why. Certainly for iPad, double clicking is the secret.
Okay. So, yeah, so you get a little better formatting. You'll see a little anchor over here. That will not print when you print it, but that is what gives us the mouse over to give us the hints. So that's why you see this little icon here.
Mm-hmm.
So that'll give you, check the protest time limit, the suggested question for the hail, things like that.
I don't see the little anchor.
Yeah, I don't know. It's probably not a functionality that's in an iPad.
Yeah, probably not.
So, but the nice thing when we have validity conclusions, we get the Microsoft Word numbering.
Oh.
Which is nice because it didn't do it just then. Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
It'll renumber if you enter, if you want to edit your conclusions, it's nice that if you stick something in there in between 1 and 2, it'll become the new 2 and 2 will become 3.
Right.
All into efficiency.
Yep.
Oh, that's pretty neat, huh? You just put the rule in and it describes the rule.
Yeah. So in the
You put
Word
the rule
form,
in it to describe it.
let's start with the easy one. If you copy and paste out of the standard wording, let me get in my standard wording. If I copy and paste this section into here and get my formatting right.
Right into the Word standard wording. Which
Now, this X or Y, you can
save.
just type something in. You don't have to do any deleting. And anything that has 2 choices becomes a drop down.
Ah. Wow.
So this
Nice.
can, especially as you get into the Rule 14s where it's room, mark room, vote entitled to mark, there's a whole lot of choices. That's a giant time save to copy and paste out of the standard wording. So, being Microsoft Word, you'll often see that sometimes when you get down into here, the numbering gets messed up.
Oh,
So starting out, when the numbering gets messed up, I like to just go in my home tab and click the numbering, and that'll get me, at least so they're sequential, whatever I highlighted. And then I hover over this 2, and there is a restart. I right click it, and there's a restart at 1. So that's how I fix my number formatting easily. So again, if I highlight it and I click my numbering up here,
yeah,
and then up here, there's a restart at one or a set numbering value. But that's how I get that back when it goes bad on me. So those are the, I think the convenience of having the numbering is worth it to me, but you're going to find your own preference there.
okay. I like it.
Okay. So, so now let's talk about the auto text. So if we go to our standard wording, every standard wording has this text shortcut here. So OBS-1, somebody attended as an observer. That's in procedural matters.
So all we do is type in.
OBS-1,
Do we have?
and on some computers it's enter, and on some it's F3.
Okay.
But it drops right in.
Look at that. That is really nice.
And now I'm going to restart myself at 1. But that's the giant time save. This just started, it's worked on Windows for years. On Mac, it started working with the last update about April 1st.
Okay.
So this is where you can save tons of time. You know, if have an interpreter, I can type in the interpreter language.
Yeah, that's great, JP.
So, so the auto text and the drop downs and the form fills work. So let's talk about what happens when you get something that you can't get out of it, or you want to delete this.
Are you
So if you right click,
John?
What?
Can't get out of it. John had to spend a long time with me today because I couldn't get out of something. Yeah. I did.
So let's say I want to tweak my standard wording because it doesn't really apply and I need to get rid of this. Hitting backspace doesn't really get rid of it. So you right click and remove content control is what makes that go away.
And this is all in our little manuals that we got.
Yeah, that's in the instructions document.
So when we go to a big event, we better bring the instructions document with us, Bill. Where is it? And John.
If you highlighted it, could you press delete and have it go away, or they have to go the way you said?
No, if I get all the way around it, then it'll go. But if I just, I have to highlight something adjacent to make the delete key work. So I like to just remove content control, gets rid of it, is my preference. But, you'll find your own. But if you're frustrated that you can't make it disappear, the right click, delete, remove content control nukes it and makes it go away.
John's going to be getting a lot of invitations.
So with that, let's skip number 2 for the moment and let's do number 3.
Okay.
So looking at protest number 3.
Are you going to bring it up? We've read them. We all are pretty good little preppers. I know.
Yep.
From the group.
So who wants to be who wants to chair?
Whose turn is it to chair?
Nancy, why don't you pick a victim?
I can pick a victim. I hear giggling. Is that Betsy?
No, that's Pat Diesman.
Let's pick on Betsy. Betsy, I want to have you chair this.
Oh, wouldn't you know it? So, okay.
There you are. So
here I go.
First,
we have to go to validity. We'll go to validity first.
We got.
I will tell you.
Yes, let's do validity.
Okay, so I am having a little trouble with the technology, so I'm not positive I'm the best person at the moment. But
pretend that we're not using the technology because John will be walking us through how the system works. But
okay,
the magic question that you might want to ask is, how did John will be playing the protestor, and now we like to know how he informed the other boat.
Oh yes, well let's start with that. How did you inform the other boat?
Right when they hit me, I said protest, and 5 seconds later, I had my flag out and on the side stay.
Okay, so that is. You're gonna have to hold on for 1 second, Nancy, because I got to pull up the form. It's a little tricky here.
Hey, Betsy, can you see it on the screen? And it complies with what John just testified about. He hailed the word protest immediately, and then
here I'll
displayed a
there's the form. Yeah, I couldn't see the form, so okay. Yes, I could definitely go through this now. Thanks for your patience, everybody.
Now, Betsy, why don't you take a look at when it was filed and see if it's timely filed? Let's have John go back up to the top of the form and look at when it was checked in.
Hold on. Flipping the
Super
request.
helpful.
There you go.
Oh, we have FAR 40.
Oh, right. So it did, yeah, the time limit was the same day. It was at 1925, so it was received in 1912. So that part is fine.
Yep.
And stamped in.
And now we need to see if it identifies the incident for us, Beth. So maybe John can take us back to the
Yeah. If you could take me back to the incident, that would, it did, well, it did identify the incident for sure.
No, we don't want to go shopping, John. No shopping. The incident.
Okay. Okay. So does it identify the incident? Yes, it does.
I thought it did too. So
Yeah.
Betsy, now if we're sitting in a protest hearing, it's looking valid for those things. It identifies the incident. And we had a timely hail and a timely flag.
Yep. I guess I should ask if the protester was actually on the boat with the individual who's protesting. Were you on the boat?
I sure was.
And you were involved were you involved in the incident?
Yep.
Okay.
And Betsy, I say something to the other judges, to the 38 other judges you have on your panel. Does anybody have any other questions for John? And we might get something out of one of our other participants. I don't have any further questions.
I have a question. Are we talking about validity questions or is it a question about the incident?
Yes, Russ, we're still on validity.
We're on validity.
Okay, I have a question for later.
No, okay. Okay. So as far as the protest committee goes, are we clear that this is a valid protest?
Does anybody think this protest is invalid? The competitors have stepped away. Our chair asked them to step away. Does anybody think we have a validity problem?
No.
No.
Okay. Should we call them back, Betsy, and let them know?
Yeah. Let's call them back. Yep.
Here they
The
are.
only question we didn't ask was if there was any conflict of interest.
Yep.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yep. Because it was a little tricky with the screens and all for me. Because I'm just getting used to these Word and PDF documents. So, okay, so we've called them back into the room. So for the protest store, can you walk me through what happened?
Yeah. About a minute before the start, I was lined up. I was 3 hull lengths down the line from the boat end. I was luffing on starboard at about 10 knots. Out of nowhere, C-17, 217 on the same tack hit me from behind. There wasn't any damage or injury, but he pushed me over the line and I had to dip back behind the line before I started. I said protest right away and put up my 12x12 red flag. They claimed the current pushed them into me and I told them that, and they said they wouldn't take a penalty. It's absurd. We were racing on a lake. There is no current. And even if there was, it would push us both equally.
Okay. Others on the committee have any questions?
I think Russ had a question.
I have a question for John. Were there any penalty flags? What flag was flying at the prep?
Papa.
A Papa, even though it was a Sea Scow race?
Yeah, we had race sense on it. It's great.
Oh, okay. Good answer.
We got the Cheesehead team here working together.
That was a good question, though.
President.
So for the protest store, I did have a question about that. Can you tell me, was the Papa flag up or not up at the time of the incident?
Papa flag had come down because it was just past that 1 minute mark.
Okay, so it was just past the 1 minute mark. Okay, thank you. Okay. Were you on attack when this happened?
Yeah, I was on starboard.
You were on starboard. And do you know of did you bring a witness with you?
No.
Okay. Does the committee have any other questions?
You were on starboard, but I have a question. Were you making any forward motion while luffing?
That was pretty stationary.
Where was the contact? Was it on the transom, on the port?
Yeah, he hit me right in the rudder.
On the rudder.
And he had
Okay.
he had a plastic bow rail. I had an aluminum rudder. There wasn't any damage, but but he definitely followed me and he didn't do his turn, so that's why we're here.
And you say did he push you over the line? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I have a question for John.
Yeah.
John, when you first noticed the boat astern of you, how many boat lengths ahead were you?
I was in traffic. I didn't see him until I was looking forward, and I just got hit from behind. It kind of knocked me off my feet a little bit. I didn't see him coming, but when he hit me, he was clearly on starboard and sailed right into me.
Gotcha.
Had you previously been backing your sail?
Yeah, my sail was luffing the whole time.
Well, no, you didn't back your sail.
No, not backing my sail. No,
Okay,
I was just
thank
luffing.
you.
If I was making any progress, it was a little bit sideways because I was pretty much stopped.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? Okay, go ahead.
A couple of quick questions. We knew it was 10 knots of breeze, and you're saying there was no current. What was the sea condition?
Maybe 3-inch chop.
Okie doke. Assuming there's no more questions, can we speak with the person being protested?
Sure. Hi, I'm protestee.
Hello, protestee. You're strangely familiar.
I like your hat.
There.
Okay, Mr. Protestee. Can you tell us what happened, please?
Yeah, I was coming up to the starting line and I tried to stop, and there must have been current because I just couldn't stop and I sailed right into him. And it's not my fault that I couldn't stop. The current must have pushed me.
Current must have pushed you.
Wow.
About how fast were you going when you were moving along there?
Probably 2-3 knots.
Okay. And you're what tack were you on?
Starboard.
Starboard. And how far away were you from the starting line when this happened?
It was probably 2 boat lengths, and it was probably a boat length and a half, and he was a half a boat length, and then he went over the line. I don't know why we're here. I don't know why we're here. He beat me in the race.
Well, understood. Okay, so did you tell me after it happened? Did you have any discussion with him? Did you hear anything from him?
Yeah,
Did you see it?
he said protest, but that's ridiculous. I couldn't avoid him. Why should I have to do a penalty?
Okay. Okay. I think you've answered all of my questions. Anybody else have any questions from the protestee?
John, can you describe that current that you're seeing on the inland lakes?
Well, something pushed me into him. It sure wasn't me, so there had to be current.
All right.
Were there any fish in the area?
Any lobster pots? Don't you have lobster pots in your lake? We might, Betsy, it is possible, since we have the PRO happens to be hanging around the neighborhood, you could probably ask the PRO in as a witness. We could pick on Russ for that and ask, if we did that, we could ask Russ, if we think it's important, whether there was current, because Russ's notes on his signal boat would probably have something to say about whether there was current or not. We have one.
I guess that would be relevant, wouldn't it? It would be relevant, because I'm thinking through this.
Folks, I don't recall ever seeing.
It doesn't matter why the boat clear astern hit.
I don't recall seeing current being part of the rule.
I think that is right, Fred. I think the answer is, if somebody has broken Rule 12, there's no thing in Rule 12 that says except if there's current. So Betsy had that right. Is it relevant?
Right.
And I think Fred and Betsy have both said that's not really relevant. We are, as competitors, we are responsible to managing the current.
All right. So
we must manage it.
I'm going to make a suggestion here. Watch my cursor.
Current was not relevant. It was not a factor. I love that. Okay.
So there we
I,
have a found.
I don't think that I have any other questions. Does anybody else have any questions?
It doesn't have anything to do with the form, but I just wondered why he was protested for breaking Rule 12 and disqualified, but nothing was mentioned about 14, which applied also.
Yeah, because frankly, I ran out of time in my prescribed.
Okay.
And
Thank you.
you know,
And absolutely, that would be part of the decision.
we can
We should
decide
put it into,
the guy in the white hat
in there, but okay, that's fine there.
broke Rule 14 as well.
Yep.
And
So
Fred, do you have any questions in case we decide that Rule 14 is pertinent that you would like to ask?
Well, if you're asking me, I would want to know if there was damage or injury to anybody.
I think we've had testimony that there's no damage or injury.
Right.
And I heard the protestor say that he wasn't really even seeing this boat until he felt the impact. So we might want to find out if there was any way that he could have avoided the contact. He was ahead. If we've got
There's no obligation for him to anticipate that.
That's right. That's right, Peter. So
Sounds
True.
So
Rule 14.
John, I would like to suggest there's one fact that you should add, which is that 25 was not aware of 217 until the collision.
That's a good idea. Because then it's clear that he couldn't have avoided it because he wasn't aware of it. And it was behind him, so he wouldn't have been looking for it.
I like
that way we can exonerate him at the end.
Yeah.
Done.
okay.
Okay.
Good suggestion. There was no damage or injury.
So what I had, my standard wording, I had Rule 12, and I have a couple of 14s because I think I need to address 14 for both boats. So it was reasonably possible for C217, and here's the magic of this big drop down, to avoid contact with another boat, because now there are 3 Rule 14s, and I can choose that it's 14A.
Okay, so you think it was reasonably possible to avoid contact?
For C2, for 217, I do. For the boat that,
that's the boat that came from astern. Thanks.
yep. And now I'm going to say for B25,
it was not reasonably possible.
It was not reasonably possible, and he is the right-of-way boat.
Right.
Oh, that drop down thing is great.
Isn't it cool? I'm buying.
That's really cool. Yeah.
Reformed me because it doesn't work on iPads.
And we took all that big text down to nothing in a real hurry.
Yeah.
And then JP, you need to add exoneration.
Fantastic.
Well, so we don't need an exoneration if we say it was not reasonably possible. If it was reasonably possible, we can exonerate on they acted after it was clear.
The right-of-way boat did not break 14.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah, because it was not reasonably possible. He didn't see that boat coming. That boat hit him in the stern.
Right.
I need a glass. I don't have a glass.
We're doing pretty good.
Yeah. So
this is great, though.
This is pretty quick, guys.
Yep. It is really quick. It's wonderful.
Kids in the hallways wanting to give out the trophies right now, Betsy.
I'm ready for my cocktail. Okay, so so for the decisions, that's it. I really can't hear you, Nancy. You're kind of clicking.
Oh, that came from a decision and scoring change.
Yep.
Where do we say which rule was broken, John? Must be conclusions.
The conclusion is 12.
Right. I just
I guess so.
In there. Oh, there it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
12 and 14 is in there.
And
so
12.
And we're going to read them the decision at 1918. And for the date, we've got a date picker.
Oh, that's so great. Jeez.
Good job.
So Ron Woods' wife died.
We have the king of the protest dinner, but I thought that that was
My
fine for
screen.
being picked on out of the clear blue sky.
Thank you.
Mr. Cook knows me really well. He feels free to pick on me all the time. He has a license to pick on me.
Yep. Okay. So why don't we take a bio break?
All right, time for a bio break. 10 minutes?
Yeah,
Who's
let's
gonna start the little clock? We normally have a little clock at the top set for 5 minutes. I don't know who does that normally. Somebody in our normal group. Not me.
Just a question. This started at 7 o'clock Central Time, or what time did you guys
It
start?
started at 6 Central, Fred, 7
Oh,
Eastern.
that's why I'm late. I'm sorry. I apologize.
No worries. It's been recorded, so you can we'll get it up and you can watch the beginning.
Yeah,
Okay.
everybody be aware we are recording this so that other people can listen to instructions about
what
the
that is,
form.
Lord.
John can edit out anything that becomes just noise to make it more concise.
Hey, and Nancy and John, I apologize also for being late. I just didn't do the time change right.
Yeah, no worries.
Well, that's okay. Much
so
like
let's
Tony, you can listen to the first bit of it.
Yeah, let's reconvene in 10.
Yes. All right. Bio
Thank
break.
you.
Take a lot of the stuff out. A lot of it's been in there a long time.
If anyone's listening, what did you discuss in the first hour?
A lot of validity.
Validity?
Yeah, on the first, we were talking, well, he went through the, it's definitely, if it were me, definitely worth watching the recording if you can, because he goes through a lot of the technology in the first hour, in the beginning of it, and how to use it, and whether to use the PDF, the benefits of using the PDF versus the Word, and how to click on things. It's unbelievable. For me, I'm just a club judge. I mean, I just have been handwriting everything. This is fantastic, so.
Well, I'm a national judge, but that doesn't make any difference. I'm just too old to understand all these computer things.
All these clickings, yeah.
You didn't discuss any of the other mock hearings during the first hour?
We discussed the first one. We went through the whole first one. And there was about 8 reasons why it was an invalid protest. So
the first one,
that.
which was the first one?
That one, it was the one where somebody, Sea Scow, is leaving the dock and hits another Sea Scow. And the guy in the name of the boat has something to do with smoking weed. I can't remember. So his graphics were ruined, and he wants he wants somebody to pay for that. So
why, if you don't mind my asking, why was that even considered a valid protest in the first place? Because it didn't happen near the starting line.
It wasn't valid because of that. It wasn't valid because he wasn't on the boat. He wasn't a person racing. He was a support person. It was not valid for several reasons. So yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. It means I'm learning something, like I said. Thank you.
Yeah, that one was perfect. Yeah, back with my glass of water. That one was made, John made that one on purpose so we'd have lots of things to chew on.
Was any of it legal? What I'm talking about, what he was chewing,
on.
For preparing the entire session for tonight. Oh, somebody gave us 10 minutes.
Nancy, I'm up in your region now. I've moved from the Keys up. I live in Maine now. So whenever there's a chance, I really would like to do more of this. And I know I need a lot more experience. So I would love any opportunity. I'd be happy to come down to anywhere in New England. I'd be happy to go.
You may have something. Send me a text and remind me.
I will. Thank you.
We have a couple of events coming up. Bill and I have one that we're working on kind of as co-chief judges, and we're full for that one, but I have another one where I may have a play.
Yeah, we're in Moab right now.
Okay.
Moab.
We just did someone yesterday, Betsy, and we'd love to have you in future. I have one other one that would be a long drive. Where in Maine are you?
Right near Camden. It's a drive.
Seeing sites that are not typically on the tourist.
Newport's far, but anywhere around Boston,
We are
you
climbing rock.
know.
We've got,
Okay.
well, we have some stuff on the Cape and some stuff on Long Island.
We've had a Jeep for
Long Island, I
2 years.
don't want to subject you to.
Yeah.
Almost wore out a perfectly good new RJ last year with this. This is a PRO that needs a lot of assistance.
I broke
Not on this call tonight.
the step ladder.
So, well, that could be.
We have our NRO if we have PRO questions to ask tonight. Russ will be in that role.
Step up.
A couple years ago, I was with on a panel and with a regatta with, I don't know, it was only about 250 copies, and the PRO disappeared. He didn't come back after the races.
Disappearing PRO. I believe I
Completely.
did that PRO myself.
That was challenging.
Paperwork with him.
He had all his stuff. Yep, he was gone. So all these kids are, it was all these scoring inquiries. It was a big learning experience for me, I have to say. So, yeah, don't let the PRO disappear.
Have you had a chance to touch base with our RAJ, who is Mary Pierce?
I have not touched. I have not touched base with her. I was on a race committee with her 2 years ago, though. She's delightful. So I didn't realize she's our RAJ. I will definitely contact her.
Okay, and you should let her know that you're living in the area and that you're in the flock.
And see, I'm looking also. I'm available.
Are you?
Hi, Susan.
Yep.
Thanks, Susan. Always good to work with. Conveniently located.
Right. You can go north or south.
Well, and I mean, I can usually find, I mean, not on Long Island, but elsewhere I could, probably find a place to stay or whatever. So, and it's all good if you have any ideas. I'll send you a text, Nancy, and keep me in mind.
I will keep you both in mind. We recently picked up Christina for one of these events because we know she's worked with these boats before.
Right.
Oh, John.
Fun.
Okay. Is everybody back? Normally we only take 5-minute bio breaks.
Nancy, I just got a call from Marblehead, so.
Oh, about.
It's Jackson Cup weekend.
When will you be here? You're coming, right?
I'm going to go to Southie tomorrow, and then I'm going to come out for breakfast at the Driftwood on Friday.
Oh, nice.
And nothing but the finest. And then the weekend is, 65 plus or minus races.
Here. It was beautiful today. It was warm and sunny. I was mostly trying to learn to use the new software, but glad you'll be here. What time are you going over to the Driftwood?
Well, it depends on when Lizzie drives me on Friday, probably 9-ish.
9-ish? Send me a
Maybe.
text.
No. Friday, maybe 8 to 9, right in there.
Okay.
And then Saturday, I'll be there Saturday and Sunday morning too, because I just like.
We love the Driftwood. Best corned beef hash and poached eggs in the world. But they only make a good poached egg on the weekend. You know what the Driftwood is like. Those who come to Marblehead are probably familiar with the Driftwood. It's the old fisherman's breakfast, cash only. I should send Karen a little note that you're on this call.
Hey, Russ, I gotta say that Strasburg and I missed you last weekend.
Oh, I was living vicariously through you guys. And on behalf of Diane and I both, we missed Charleston.
Is Diane coming to Marblehead?
No, she's not. She's preparing for a
This
baby
year.
shower.
That sounds important to me.
Yeah.
All right, less than a minute, and we reconvene.
So Nancy, you're talking about Marblehead. I'm guessing you're up there.
I live in Marblehead, yeah.
Yeah, I'm one of the newbies on the block. I'm down here in Buzzards Bay.
Where my stable town, 1742. I grew up in Wellesley and I lived in Boston until I retired, and then I decided I'd like to be 2 miles from the yacht club, which is nice. Have you been?
When did you move to Chicago, Nancy?
Oh, I left Chicago, Fred, in 2011.
Oh,
I had been working in Boston for about 4.5 years before that. And I had a place to live in the Back Bay, but I didn't sell my house in Logan Square until 2011. And my house here, I bought it, it's Marblehead. I bought it in 2 sections.
yeah, very nice.
I bought the first one earlier, and
My oldest daughter and her entire family live in Massachusetts, and one in Providence, Rhode
where?
Island. Yeah.
Well, I grew up in Massachusetts and I do love it here.
Yeah, I can understand why.
It's a great place.
I was out in Chicago 04 to 09 and then came back to Massachusetts.
Well, Florida can be very, very nice. I'd love a warm weather house, believe me.
I grew up around Boston and I raced out of Marblehead for 20 years and then, lived various other places. And I'm so happy to be back in New England, I have to tell you.
What kinds of boats did you race here, Betsy?
I was off keel boat. Well, I guess I raced a little bit on Lightnings, but mostly keel boats.
Lightnings are Daryl's main boat. He's very competitive in Lightnings.
Wouldn't mind getting on a Lightning again sometime. It was a lot of fun.
We don't have any Lightnings left here anymore.
Is that right?
Do you have any US 1 designs anymore? That's what I raced for 10 years.
We don't have a fleet. It's possible there's still some boats in the backyard someplace. John
Gotcha.
Deason might know for sure. He may have still stepped away. I don't know. Time to start again, John.
Yep. Okay. So I'm going to pick on my friend Dean Drevlo to chair this one.
Hi, Dean.
So you would pick one that just hit the press this morning, didn't you?
Sure did.
Okay.
All right. So
let's see what's said here. Oh, this one. Yeah.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. That sounds so familiar.
So why don't we have Russ, the PRO, be the protester, and I'll be the protestee.
Okay. Russ, would you like to protest this boat? This is for those who didn't read their email from Judy and Tom Duggan this morning. The race committee, Tom Duggan is the chair of the race. How do we say this, Russ? The race officers committee. And they are very concerned right now with sale numbers that don't correspond to Appendix G. G as in golf. So have that in your minds, judges. We're likely to see more of this year.
It's the race
And
management, it's the race management committee.
Yes, thanks, Fred. Knows all of US Sailing, the race management committee. And Tom has asked us as judges to watch out for this and help our race committee friends because they believe that we are seeing more non-compliant sale numbers that are real hard to read. So
I've done a lot of team racing in both high school and collegiate. Always had a problem with the yellow numbers on sales.
yeah, yellow numbers on white sails are invisible. We can all agree. This is not that case. These are white on a black sail.
Or with the sun behind it.
Yeah. Well, Russ is going to tell us all about it.
We
The race
will.
committee
This is
brought
actually
in
a real case for
They
Dr.
will be,
Dreblov
Russ.
and I.
Based on Tom's request, Tom Duggan has asked race officers and judges to consider protesting the violation of Appendix G because feedback he's had from your team is that your other team is that some sail makers are putting numbers on that are very, very difficult to read. And as you will recall, we use bow numbers on our J70s here in Marblehead for that very reason. Because we don't have numbers on our chutes. And so it's real hard for the race committee to know who we are. So we cooperate.
Well, I think what Tom is asking us to do is to write into the NOR specifically Appendix G 1.2A3 to make it very, very clear at the time of deciding whether or not to attend that your sales and the sale numbers comply. And it's a real case that Dean Dreblov and I are in I don't know if Fields Gunson is out there too, that we see every summer up on Lake Superior, but it's not just Lake Superior, of course, it's all over the place. So anyway, that's what this is about. So what would you like me to do?
Well, Dean's going to chair the hearing. So Dean, why don't you go?
Yes, I will be happy to. So we have a protest here. We have, and let's see, is being represented by the race committee, which is Russ, and it is against, who's our other party?
Me, John Porter.
Okay, thank you, John.
It's that John Porter guy again. He's here every week.
Yeah, he probably put red numbers on a black sail, I'm guessing, but okay, I'm not going to prejudge him.
Be white.
Okay, so when we look through this, we have times to change. Only got one person. We've gone through the, let's say we've gone through the introduction. Anybody object? Nobody said they object. Okay.
May I offer an objection or question at least?
Sure.
Well, and having been a judge now for, I don't know, close to 50 years, I think, I have never come across a Appendix G protester hearing. In this particular case, I have a question because Appendix G, as I read it, applies only to national or world-class regattas. And this one is a spring event, which probably doesn't qualify for world-class or national or international. So does it even apply in this case?
Look at Rule 77, Fred.
I read to Rule 77, but even with that, it doesn't seem to me to apply.
But you could put it there.
So let's take a look at Rule 77, identification on sales. A boat shall comply with the requirements of Appendix G governing class insignia, national letters, and numbers on sale. Now, we have had
But,
this
but
come up with
Appendix G
delays
itself
with-
says strictly world-class or national or international.
Well, this
Now,
is
if you put it in the NOR or the SIs, then by all means it would apply. But with
Well, we got a PRO coming into the room. We can ask him if he put this, what his documents look like.
yeah, and if you look at the type of boat, it's a FAR 40, which is a world sailing class.
Boat, yes, it is. We've had a lot
but
of.
the regatta is
one on the
not
bottom
a world-class or national event.
Yeah, but the Appendix G only says it
That was
has
the
to be
water
a
spillage
world
the other day.
world
So
sailing
let me-
class. It doesn't say it's a international event.
So excuse me, let me shortcut this discussion in the interest of time. If you take a look at G2, there is a U.S. sailing prescription on this.
Thank you. Dean?
And basically it says U.S. sailing prescribes that unless otherwise stated in our class rules, the sales of a boat that is not a world sailing class shall comply with rule G1, Gulf 1, which include specifications of G1 to A3 of contrasting color to the body of the sail.
I retract my suggestion.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. Thank you, Fred. And I think this is quite important because we're going to be seeing it this year based on Mr. Duggan's request to us. So it's good that we have this straight in our minds. And FAR 40s are world sailing class boats. All of us from Chicago are pretty well aware of that, as we've had the FAR 40 Worlds 3 times at Chicago Yacht Club. So we have FAR 40s here. And Russ may have even made sure the OA got this into the NOR because he's a good PRO and he's the one bringing the protest. So.
Well, I considered just playing along here. I considered writing it into the NOR, but since the preamble to Appendix J says I don't need to write into the race documents what's already in the rules, and the rules are pretty clear, and Appendix G does apply, then my feeling was the law or the rule applies.
Okay.
Okay, can we move on?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. So,
What would you like to do?
Let's see, we're with the objection.
By me.
We didn't,
So
Vice President,
this is a
objection based on,
protest by the race committee.
yes, it's a protest by the race committee. Race committee saw the incident. Not the protest committee, but the race committee saw the incident. Some validity. Sorry, I'm trying to squint and read John's.
There, I'll zoom in a little on it.
Thank you. Okay, submitted in writing. Yep, filed within the time.
Okay. You were at
Time.
work when these came out, so that's okay that you know.
Yeah, was filed in the time limit.
Yep, was filed in the time limit. Identifies the protest, the incident. Rule
Yes.
77. Identifies the protester and
Well, some
protestee.
judges
Yes,
may have some questions under 60.2.
I'm sorry, say that again, Nancy.
Well, you may have some questions under 60.2, as we did on the previous ones. Questions maybe for Russ, who is the protestor. We understand, Russ, were you the PRO today? Oh, Russ, come back.
Hello.
There he
Hi,
is.
I'm here.
Were you the PRO?
Yes, I was.
And did you see this issue with the numbers yourself? Did you observe it?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Can you tell us a little bit about what the issue is here for you?
Well, the sale numbers are so faint that against the black sailcloth, they were very, very difficult for us to make out, especially at a distance. These are big boats. The starting lines are long. It's a long way to see where the boat is, and with an overcast sky, and it's the end of the day, we could barely make out.
So
When
are we
the
venturing into testimony instead of just hearing validity?
We haven't
We
finished
are.
validity.
Yeah, we haven't finished validity.
Oh.
So I think it would be okay to tell Russ, the question was a validity question, and he answered it that he did observe this himself from his signal book. So
I think we need to ask about informing within the protest time limit.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
So we have, according to our protest, John, trying to see, scroll up and see, it was filed 1906, time limit was 1951. It was filed within the time limit. And that is noted on the second line of the validity of the protest.
Yep.
But
Okay.
I'm talking
How
about
was the
the
protest
posting on
informed?
the notice board.
I was going to say, what was what was
I
on
think
the
where
board?
Nancy was going was notifying the protestee.
Well, I didn't ask that question. Peter, go ahead. If Russ is ready to answer questions about what he did.
Okay, how was the protestee notified?
We just posted it to the official notice board within the time limit.
At what time did you do that, Russ?
At the same time we filed the protest, which was at 7:06 p.m., which was well below 45 minutes before the protest time limit.
Thank you.
And did the NOR or SI
Thanks for the water.
specify any reason that
It could be a
competitors
cop,
were to
but
look at the
look
notice
look
board
up
at that
there.
time?
I had two different comments at one time. Can we say again, please?
The question was there anything in the notice of race or sailing instructions
I'll repeat my
directing people
question.
to look to the notice
Did the
board?
notice board for any reason?
There was nothing in the NOR or SIs.
So no statement that all protests would be posted or anything like that?
No, just the protest time limit was at 7:51 p.m.
Well, let's ask our protest secretary, John Porter. John, did this get posted to the official notice board?
Yeah,
That goes in the microwave.
yeah, and as the protestee, I saw it on the official notice board. That's why I'm here.
All right,
Okay.
so that's fine.
Okay.
Should he have been informed after race one?
No.
Under 60.22 A2.
Let's take a look. 60.2 A2. If the protestor is a committee, it shall inform the boat after the race within the protest time limit of its intention to protest her. Good catch, Ralph.
It's a little ambiguous though, whether it should be "and" in there, but
It
Yeah,
says
putting it
within the
in my glass.
protest time limit, so I believe
Right.
there's no issue.
Yeah, we sailed 4 races today. There was one protest time limit. It was posted within that time limit.
Nope, I got glass.
you know, in sort of fairness, sort of due process, that boat could have been informed after a race that there's a problem.
And how
And
would I have
fix-
changed my sale numbers between race 1 and 2?
That would not have helped them.
Well, maybe you have another set of sales at shore. I would have wanted to know after race 1. Yeah.
Stick on sale numbers.
Okay, I think the question is, what does the rule say?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. But it
One
says
of our
the
team
race.
has pointed out that we may have a rule impacting validity. Fortunately, we have our IJs with us tonight. Ralph, let's pick on some of our IJs here. Is Daryl with us? Daryl, I'm calling you, Daryl.
I mean, I would say we quoted the rule that said a committee can protest a vote by informing them within the protest time limit.
But it says the race, not the races. And he's being disqualified from 4 races.
Well, that's not what, but Ralph.
Wait, you're disqualifying me already? We haven't even had a hearing.
What I wanted to say is, I think that Appendix G does understand that that can happen when you have multiple races on a single day and this one problem proceeding throughout the whole day, because it doesn't say you have to disqualify them. There are options that you can address if you find the person has been violating 77, or in this case, G. So I think that might be why they've done that. I'm just guessing, because it seems that it's going to be very common to have multiple races in one day, and you can't just stop everything and go, can we all wait while he changes his sail? So you have warning, you have other things.
That's great, but Daryl's correct. The only thing that this rule says is that it has to be posted within the time limit for protest time for the race. So whether it's the first race or the 4th race, they have the same time limit. And so it doesn't matter that it's the first race.
I think that was a good analysis, Fred, and I think we would like to discuss these facts. So,
Well,
John,
Nancy, before you discuss facts, you just have to say, is it valid or invalid?
well, that's what we're trying to agree, Daryl. So Daryl and Fred both think that there is only one time limit applicable to the racing today. And the time limit for a protest in race 1 is the same as the time limit for a protest in race 4. Which makes
And the only requirement of Rule 60 is that it be after the race. It doesn't say within a certain amount of time after the race.
Yeah, well, it has to
within
be.
the protest time limit.
Yeah.
If the protestor is a committee, it shall inform the board after the race within the protest time limit of its intention to protest her. Reading that literally, it sounds to me like that
broke up.
has been that. Daryl thinks that Bruce. We've lost Bruce. We've heard from Daryl, we've heard from Fred that I think most of you know that the board of US Sailing has approved that Fred's IJ paperwork will be forwarded to World Sailing now. We won't hear for a while, but I don't know if we still have Bruce. I can't see. You can hear me. John, do you want to stipulate this as valid?
Well, I'm the protestee, so
You
I'm
should.
hoping you find it invalid.
All right. We have
So do you
one
have
of the finest IJs at our event.
So Nancy, I just
want
to make a point.
Yes, Dean.
You need to read 60.2 and 60.3 together, because 60.2D says a committee may protest, but 60.3 says when the time limit is. So you have to put the two together. So the committee may inform its intention by posting on the notice board, but then it has the same limitation that all protests have, that it's a two-parter, and they're in two separate parts of the rule.
Right. So that's why the protestor Russ was telling us that he thinks it was, that the vote was properly informed by the fact that this was timely posted on the notice board. And the protest secretary also testified that that happened.
A
Posting
point
on a
of,
board doesn't inform the vote.
Hi, Kim. I couldn't quite hear that.
Yeah, posting on a board does not inform the vote.
Unless it's
Yes, it
stated.
does. It does
Well,
under 60.2D.
Yeah.
If you write it in, maybe.
No, it's a
60.2D.
rule.
It does
Oh,
automatically.
it's in the rule.
It's in the rule.
It's a rule change this quad.
Well,
Kim.
I've got the book.
Okay. So hold on, Kim.
He said that he was informed.
Form a vote of its intent to protest.
Yep.
So Kim read 60.2D and tell me what you think is what it means.
It says a committee may inform a vote of its intention to protest by posting a notice on the official notice board. So this is a committee, this is the race committee, and this was posted on the official notice board in a timely fashion.
yeah, 60.1 B 1 and 2 apply only if it's not in the race, in the sailing instructions or the NOR.
Well, Russ testified that he thought about putting it in, but he didn't.
What?
Well, I didn't think that I needed to because I didn't want to duplicate what was already in the rules. And I felt that the rule was pretty explicit.
Yeah.
And I'm not a fan of duplicating in the race documents what's already in the rules, and I like to comply with Appendix J.
We're confusing testimony with validity. The question is, was the vote informed? And was it within the time limit?
I believe it's yes and
Yeah,
yes.
that's been established.
Yeah.
Well,
no one has said this is valid, so I'm just asking you.
I agree it's valid.
I think it's valid.
It's valid.
How about 60.3, delivering protest? 60.3,
What
delivering protest.
I agree with 60.3.
A.
60.3 is only valid if it's not in the sailing instructions or the NOR.
Where does it say that?
The last paragraph.
It says if it states a different.
If the sailing instructions state a different protest time limit, then that time limit applies instead.
Perfect. Does the sailing instruction say that?
Wait,
No.
hold on, Kim. Kim, why do you think this is invalid? What part of 60.3 says this is invalid?
I don't think they informed the boat correctly.
Okay, if you look at 60.2D, that defines how a committee has to inform the vote.
Right, and then they inform, yeah, but then they deliver the protest. This is the information, but they still have to deliver the protest itself to the boat.
Right, it has to be delivered within the time limit.
Correct.
Agreed.
Not posted, not just posted, delivered.
Yeah, but it's delivered. It's delivered to the protest committee, not to the boat.
Yep, the boat has to be protested. How does the boat know?
By the
There's no
notice board.
Because
no.
Paying attention to the notice board.
Yeah, there is no requirement for boat to go and check a notice board.
Yes, there is.
Yes, there is.
Yes,
there is.
The requirement is in Racing Rule 60.2 D.
60.2B.
D is in David.
They
Delta.
may inform the boat that posted on the board, but they still have to deliver the protest itself.
No, they do not.
I don't see that requirement, Kim. I'm mixed up. You know, I have great respect for Kim, but
deliver the protest is delivered to the protest desk.
That is.
No, I mean, I agree with Kim, but I thought the secretary said they delivered a protest within the time limit.
Yeah,
No, they only posted it.
No, he said he delivered it at the same time. At the same time he handed it into the desk, he put a copy on the notice board.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
It still delivers to the secretary, but how is the boat informed that there is actually protest against it?
The
The boat
notice
has no
board.
requirement to read the notice board.
Yes, there
That's
is.
where you're
Yes,
incorrect.
there
The
is.
boat
No, it
knows
does not.
It is the
There
rule.
appears-
The racing rules of sailing say that the protest committee can inform by putting it on the notice board. That means sailors are required to look
to
at the
look at the
notice
notice
board.
board.
Period. Doesn't have to be in the NOR or the sailing instructions.
The
Right, but there is a
competitors have
distinction.
the competitors have an obligation to check the notice board.
It's a good
That's the
idea.
way the rules are written. And if you don't check the notice board, then it's all on you. So can we move on, please?
Sure. How does the boat know that it's being protested, though?
It's
By
okay
looking
for
at the
Kim
notice
to,
board.
it's okay for Kim to have questions on this issue because the
Yeah.
rules of the round table are that Kim gets to have all the questions he wants.
Can I ask a question?
I think that in the name of time, we may want to stipulate validity. The one thing we've got is we have a competitor here who's being protested who said these words. He said, I saw it on the notice board. That's why I'm here. So we have
Correct. So let's move
the
forward.
protestee right now. They're here.
Okay, so we are not in unanimous agreement, but we are in majority agreement that the protest is valid. And we are going to move forward with this.
Super majority.
And we all learned a lot. Thank you, Dean.
You are most welcome. So what we're going to do is we're going to have Russ tell her story, and then we're going to have John tell his story, and then we are going to
deliberate.
Well, let John ask questions of the protestor, then Russ gets to ask questions of John, and then we will ask questions. So Russ, tell us your story.
Well, 5, 6, 7, 7, 8 is the sail numbers are white, but the insignia used to tell me what boat it is appears to be so thin that the black sail shows through and the numbers lack contrast. Because I can't read 5, 6, 6, 8, 7 sail numbers when the sun is behind their sail. They should be disqualified from races 1 through 4 and not allowed on the water for tomorrow's racing unless they change their sail numbers.
Okay, John, tell us your story.
Yeah, I bought a sail from my sailmaker. The sail is black and it's got white numbers on it. As far as I can tell, the rule says, G 1.2A3 says a contrasting color. It doesn't get any more contrasting than white on black. I don't understand why I'm here and why he's picking on me. I spent all this money to be here, and I've, sat through an hour of talking about validity. Plain as day, I've got white numbers on a black sail.
Okay, John, you can ask questions of Russ.
Russ, what color are my numbers?
They are a very, 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 very light shade of black.
Didn't you say in your write-up that they're what? Isn't your first thing on your form 5, 6, 6, 8, 7 sail numbers are white?
Wait a minute. I didn't say what I just said. Now I'm saying what I really said. The sail. And if I said it, I didn't mean it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, no, your numbers are white.
And what color is my sail?
It's black.
And what are the two most polar opposite colors in the color spectrum?
Green and red. Okay. Okay. But your white is so thin that the black shows through. And when the light hits it the wrong way or the lack of light hits it, it's really, really difficult, if not impossible, to see the numbers on your sail.
Is there anywhere in the rule that you read that it specifies how thick my white has to be?
It just said that they have to contrast. And that's, I guess, our judgment.
It says a contrasting color, not contrast visibility. Does white contrast with black?
Well, let's see what the rule does say. Does it say contrasting color?
It
Or
says
this
of a
says
contrasting
contrast.
color to the body of the sail.
Right, but if the white
Ah.
material isn't thick enough, it's not going to contrast against the black.
Yeah, is it contrasting? That's the key.
The colors are white and black. All it says is I have to have contrasting color.
It says in addition.
Well,
Yeah, read the in addition
of a
to.
contrasting color. Well, if it's not contrasting, then you've violated that part of the rule.
Well, it is
You know,
contrasting.
We're getting away from
regardless.
testimony and questions here. We should
Well, but that's
probably
really the
go back
essence
to
of this.
questions.
Yeah, and
So-
what am I
That's the-
supposed to do? I bought a sail, my sailmaker delivered it. I'm not trying to obfuscate anything.
The rule does also state that they shall be clearly legible when the sail is set. In addition to the contrast
In
requirement,
addition.
G1 too.
Well, he said it's only illegible when the sun's behind it. It's legible at other times.
So John, do you have any additional questions for Russ?
No.
Okay, Russ, do you have any questions for John?
Nope.
Okay. So,
No.
committee members, do you have any questions for either the protestor or the protestee?
I have a couple of questions. Russ, were the sale numbers legible to you when you needed to read them?
No.
Okay, any other questions for either party?
Yeah, Russ, I have a question. When you were looking at the sail with the sun behind it, did the white numbers look darker than the dark sail, or did they look lighter than the dark sail?
They looked lighter, but they weren't legible.
Yeah, okay, because unless there are any other optical physicists in the room, you could easily get a contrast reversal with this situation. It's kind of interesting. You could design numbers and sails to have precisely zero contrast, and they would look black and white with reflected light when you're in the sail loft. So in addition, they have to be clearly legible, in my opinion, is crucial here. It all comes to this.
Can I ask a question to John?
Sure.
John, did your cell numbers satisfy the rule G1.2b for its size?
Yeah, absolutely. They're the
Okay,
same.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I have a question for Russ.
The Chip?
Yep.
Better go with the Chip. It's a tough group.
Yeah, Russ, did this alleged infraction result in any race committee actions such as a UFD, BFD, ZFP, OCS in your race committee actions form that you filed at the end of the day?
What we were not sure of was what the number was that of the boat. We had to go back through our records and through a process of elimination decide that was the boat that it was, but we could not see that by just looking at the sail numbers. Where all the other boats we could.
So Russ, you were able to identify the boat in question?
Not immediately.
No, but ultimately you were?
Yeah. Yes, we were.
I have a question for Russ. Are you done, Chip? No.
Again, Russ, just to clarify, were there any race committee actions against this boat filed in your daily filing of race committee actions?
No.
Okay, thank you.
So my question for Russ is, when the sail was set, in your opinion, were the numbers clearly legible?
Were they clear or illegible? Was that your question?
Were they clearly legible? I'm looking at G1.2A for the in addition.
No, they were not. They were not legible.
They were not legible to the PRO.
I have a question for the PRO. At any time during the racing, were they legible to you?
We weren't looking at people's numbers other than at the finish. or the start.
Thank you.
Great question.
Any other boats sailing with that combination of mainsail color and number?
No, this was the only one that we had difficulty in reading the numbers.
I have a question for John. John, have you heard from any prior race committees about difficulty reading your sail numbers?
No, not at all.
Is this the first race with these sails?
No, the sail's about 2 years old. But, you know, when I was talking to the PRO before this, he said there was some note that went around from US Sailing that told him he should protest me.
And he took grading class last week.
Okay, any other questions for our protestor or protestee? And since we do not have any witnesses, I'll invite Russ to give a brief summation and followed by John.
So Bruce Cook put in the chat, is there a photo of the boat and its sails? And the answer is no.
Okay. Thank you, Bruce.
In designing this situation, you know, with the sun at one angle, it's readable, and the sun at another angle, it's pretty hard to read.
Okay.
So you want my summary?
Yes, please.
During the race and at the finish line, as boats crossed, we had one boat that we could not identify because we could not read the sail numbers because of the lack of contrast of the numbers to the sail material. And because we were hyper aware of G 1.2A3, we filed a protest.
Okay, John?
Yeah, I've had the sail for, this is the third season. Nobody's complained before. I've, you know, had the sail, haven't modified it. I got it from the sail maker. I don't know how you can say that white on black isn't effectively contrasting. And, you know, I'm pretty irritated that a note went around targeting me. You know, I go through a whole lot of stuff to be at these regattas, and dragging me into a room over sail numbers, it seems pretty silly instead of just having a conversation.
Okay, so we're going to excuse the parties. We have our scribe fortunately jotted down our facts found.
Fortunately, we have prescribed facts found. Let's read them.
So would our scribe please read the facts found for us?
Yeah, 56687 sailed races 1 through 4 with a dimension poly at Lightspeed mainsail, color black. 56687 sail numbers were located as specified in the equipment rules of sailing. 56687 sail numbers were a thin white insignia. Other black mainsails had numbers that were of a thicker white insignia. 56687 sail numbers had noticeably less contrast than the other boats with black sails, and the RC was unable to read the sail numbers on the start or finish line and identified 56687 through her unique blue hull when starting and finishing. Which, you know, obviously I made some of that up before we all came in here in my prescribe.
Okay. Do we want to modify item 5 where we say noticeably less contrast to include something about less legible, not as, let's see.
Just not legible.
Yeah, not legible. Thank you.
But in all honesty, they're only not legible when the sun is behind it.
Oh, they're not legible when the sail is set. It didn't say sail is set sometimes or legible sometimes. It says, are they legible when the sail is set? If the sun is behind them,
that rule.
They're not legible.
Quite right, Paul.
I'm good. It's fine, whatever.
And God forbid we're
They need
finishing.
to be clearly legible. The rule says clearly legible when the sail is set. Now, I think part of the good news here is we have G4.
Yeah.
We have an opportunity to warn him, and he can call his sailmaker and complain to his very own sailmaker that he's got this problem, and sailmaker needs to come down with the wide, fat, white numbers and that bottle of the dry cleaning stuff.
I'm feeling down or off.
This sounds like a
cool
sail
outside.
problem.
Is it cool
the
enough
sale was set.
outside to
Thank
open
you.
up stuff?
Well, I
And
mean,
we have begun letting the sailmakers know that this Tom Duggan
Open all
knows.
this? Huh? Oh, let's turn off the air conditioner and we're
Okay, so we have some extraneous conversation on our protest committee.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I just muted that extraneous conversation.
Thank you very much. Multitasking.
So
Very
a little
good.
bit of neon orange sticky back would solve this whole problem for this person.
Okay, so we've got our facts found. We have a conclusion here. Sales numbers were not clearly legible in the sales set.
Do we agree with that? I agree with that.
Don't we need to discuss whether the numbers were visible on race 1 and then race 2 and then race 3? These boats were clearly given a time and a finish on those 3 races.
There we go.
We did hear from the PRO saying that the way they identified the boat was its blue hull, and they could not make out the sail numbers.
For all 3 races? I don't know that we heard that.
Yeah, we did hear that in,
All 4
well, we did hear it
races.
in testimony. We did not, without going back to and reading the transcript, we did not receive information of which specific race it was, but
We could call the parties back in, Dean, and ask Russ if it was all 4 races or just 1 race.
sure, let's do that.
What difference does it make?
If we're only warning, it's a
You're
moot
right.
point.
But we have a fact found that we don't have any testimony to support. It will probably take 2 seconds. The parties are right outside the Zoom.
The
Are you there?
protest form says it was races 1 through 4.
Okay, so I feel comfortable that we find that fact. I think it's good that somebody poked at the facts found and made sure that they support our conclusion, which is that we give John a warning.
Yeah,
I agree with that.
I agree with that.
I do too. Does
And
anybody disagree? And if so, please articulate why you disagree. Kim,
Well,
do you disagree?
I agree, but I want to also say I agree with saying it's 425, not 424, so that the person has more than 24 hours to try and get it fixed.
Yep, and that was my gut as well when I prescribed, was to give it a little time, especially understanding there was the blue hull and they clearly figured it out.
So we're gonna give
They had
John
the
a
right blue hull.
give him, Fred suggests that we give him 24 hours to get a hold of his sailmaker and get those.
I'm going along with the prescribe. I'm just noting the prescribe is saying not for tomorrow, but for the day after tomorrow, which I think was a good prescribe recommendation of our scribe.
It says we're supposed to, G4 says we have to give time to comply. And that seems reasonable to me. Are we in the middle of nowhere here? Where's the nearest, where is your sailmaker?
Yeah, assume we're in Lake Superior and it's pretty tough.
Well,
So
actually,
JP,
If we're in-
actually, I will say that the sailmakers, there's 2 or 3 sailmakers racing on boats during the event.
Hey, what time of night is it?
What time of night?
Yeah.
Well, based on it's dark 30 and it's probably deep into the
We're deep into protests.
Yeah.
deep into the Rumbobos by the sailmaker.
Yeah, my if it was 4 p.m., my answer is way different than if it's 8:17 like it is now.
John, how long do you think it will take you to fix this if we give you a warning?
Yeah, I mean, it's 8:17 right now. My sailmaker I saw at the bar. I don't know that I can get it done by morning, but I could certainly get it done by the next day.
I just want to say for compliance purposes, it doesn't have to be the entire sale number. And if you were to put some other sale number on the sale and change your registration to that new number, you'd be in compliance.
Well, then I'd be breaking G1.2A2, that all my sales numbers have to be the same color.
Yeah. The race committee may protest him again for that. Plus there's
Yeah, I was
class
trying to
rules.
find, I was trying to find it out.
So, JP, I got a quick question.
Yeah.
To put some skin in the game, could the protest committee, if the race documents, the notice of race, and the sailing instructions allow, could the protest committee assess a 10% DPI for the existing races 1 through 4, and then make a notation that that would be lifted once the competitor addresses the issue?
I mean, I think you could, but I think, the rule has intent in it that you can give a warning and give reasonable time. I don't see a problem with that.
The way I read G4 is that you must give reasonable time before assessing a penalty. And I would say any penalty. So what we need to determine as a protest committee is what is reasonable time in this venue. If we're in Marblehead, I can call Judd at home and ask him to bring the orange sale numbers, which have a sticky back, with him tomorrow. He will do that. It's down.
It'll be done by 8 a.m.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, yeah, in Marblehead.
Yeah, but if I'm in Des Moines, it's a very different answer.
Here.
Hey, Nancy, do you read that as there must be a warning? I don't. I read it as
There is
either.
No, I said there can be a warning.
either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or if they're obviously.
Yeah,
Or
I mean,
could be penalized even for the first offense if there's something going on, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right,
So
I mean,
What do we
yeah,
do
if I
if
was
we have a
purposely
black
trying to
head
thwart-
cell and a white main cell?
you use legible contrasting colors on each sail.
Except we just said G1.2A2 means they have to all be of the same color.
That's on the
And
same,
the
that's
letters?
on one sale.
That's on each sale.
Okay, so that was not what was just said. Thank you for clarification.
We don't think the numbers were legible when the sale was set. And that was our fact found. But looking at G4, when a protest committee finds that a boat has broken a rule of this appendix, she shall either warn her and give her time to comply or penalize her. So I take what I said back. It sounds like we could move to penalty if we wanted to, but I think I wouldn't like to do that. And I'll tell you, the competitor has used this sale for 2 years. He's never received any warnings or even any comments from his PROs before. And
Yeah,
I
use
would,
this as a lesson learned.
I'd like to give him a warning.
I completely agree. I was just pointing out, I didn't think it was a requirement. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's
So
be
The
prudent.
requirement is that if you're going to give a warning, you have to give time to comply. That's what G4
Right.
says.
And if we give
So
him,
Nancy, back to my question. If you just give him a warning versus a DPI, so he has no skin in the game and he doesn't comply for the remaining part of the event, you just let it go?
Well,
Then you
protest
can-
again.
then you
Protest them
protest
again.
again and I get DSQ.
Yeah.
let's figure out what a reasonable time is in this venue. John is racing his scow at a fairly remote lake in Wisconsin this weekend, and his sailmakers are all in Chicago. So they're not,
You don't have FedEx.
they don't live there.
Yeah. So if I have them FedEx it to me, I'm not getting it before racing. So I can have it for the next day pretty reasonably.
Right.
We know the race committee is able to score him because he's got this unusual paint job. I say we give him, he seems to say that if we give him 2 days, he can get it done.
Sounds good to me.
Thanks, John. I say we give him the amount of time that he feels is reasonable for him to call up his sailmaker and get these numbers sent up here to our small lake that's filled up with far 40s right at the moment.
Or go to the hardware store and get some.
Anybody else?
Far
Go to the
40s
hardware
on
store and
Beulah,
get some orange
JP.
tape.
Yep,
Can you comply with that, John?
absolutely.
And how
Yeah, I
many
think that's
more race
reasonable.
days do we have?
4.
a pretty long event. We only have one more race day.
This is a race week.
It's a race week. So before the end of the event, you will be in compliance. Is
Absolutely.
that correct statement of your intent? Because if you're not, we'll be back. We're watching you, dude. And just because you're friends with that other PRO that Till guy.
So John and Nancy, I think we've settled this one. We're going to issue a warning. I would like to ask a question because this is a very relevant situation for events that I run with my race management hat on. We have in the last couple of years put a DP in the NORs for Rule 77 compliance. We're trying to take the gentle, nicer, less heavy-handed. We haven't really dinged anybody hard yet, but we've gotten some pushback. And by putting it as a DPI, I would like to ask some input of what type of discretionary penalty for non-compliance, especially repeated non-compliance after we've talked to somebody, you would suggest.
What do you think?
Force them to take a turn on race committee for a while.
Yeah, make them the scribe the next big weekend. Make them take basic race management.
Yeah.
One suggestion I would make for those who are certified PROs, like Dean and Russ, is that you get a hold of Mr. Duggan and you pose that question directly to him. Exactly what would he think? What are his views on fairness? And as John testified, I tend to rely on my sailmakers. If I buy a sail and my sailmaker says this is compliant, I don't personally inspect and measure my sail unless I'm going to have it measured at a world event.
If I can jump in, I've addressed this with at least one sailmaker in Chicago because there are times that we can't make out sail numbers. And literally the response of the sailmaker was, even when we suggest they may not be compliant, they want those colors and they're the customer.
Oh,
well, then I'm far more inclined to penalize.
I am too.
Yeah.
Well, and the problem is that the sailmaker wants the business and he's going to do whatever the customer asks.
Right, but if it, it's a totally different story if the sailmaker said don't do this and they did it. Then in the early days of 3DI Raw that was black, the real problem with those sails, they put white on them and it was really thin insignia and it kind of showed through. And those sails are still out in circulation.
And Tom Duggan is telling us that this is a problem to his race committee and all of his race committee folks in the US. And he'd like to get those sailmakers to snap to. When I called the head of Doyle One Design in the Salem Loft, he immediately said, our sails are in compliance and I will double check. But what he told me was that if a customer wanted something that was not going to comply, and we had this come up once in J105s in Chicago where Shamrock wanted green numbers. I don't know. I think that you should consult with the boss, man.
If I could make a suggestion.
Of course.
This is a workload and it's not always practical, but occasionally, like in a one design fleet, the Snipes, the Lightnings, 420s, you come up, everybody knows this is an issue.
Yeah.
And you put it in measurement. Like when people register, you say to everybody, we are going to double check this issue at registration and everybody has to comply. So if you think there's an issue, you put it in your NOR and you put it in registration and say, we are double checking X, Y, or Z. and we want you to comply, and we're gonna, and that's one way to be a little bit customer friendly, because you don't want someone to show up, spend a lot of money and get DSQ'd when they didn't understand the issue or think about it. Whereas if it's in your NOR and you say measurement's gonna double check this, that at least gives everybody the heads up. This is something they need to double check.
Right.
Now,
But now
Daryl,
you're talking about having a measurement team having to like measure the thickness of a
No,
sail.
but well, I'm not saying thickness, but be practical. Somebody holds up their main and you say, is that contrasting? And can I see the numbers? And then you go check. So if you're at a big butt regatta and it's long distance, you check the safety equipment, you check the offshore IO, So I'm just saying, if you're not doing measurement, it's a lot harder. If you are doing any measurement, you could check this and double
you
check.
could hold it up. But I think that a letter, maybe put it in a letter to competitors or a big note in bold. The appendix is a rule. It's going to apply to most classes that we judge, this group. And Bill, I think for our 420s, we've had issues in the past, as you may know. We should probably add a note to the NOR that all sales should be in compliance. Their classrooms are virtually silent.
So the reality is that this is a cultural issue among owners and sailmakers. Most sailmakers will tell us that they want to do it the right way, and they say they'll do what the owner wants. The reality is that we're being asked to make sure that in our race documents we remind people about Appendix G, so that they learn that there is in fact a rule that they need to be paying attention to, because a lot of people don't know. And so
you show up with
this is a learning process for the sport.
Yeah, and I think that there's obviously some context here. Racing scows where we have Dacron mains on most of our boats, where we don't have color problems, we probably don't need it in our NOR. But in A scows where we have black mains and we have a couple old ones, we probably do.
Yep.
I mean, context is king. And then the other context is king when we talked about customer service. Certainly, if you're bringing a protest as the PRO or the protest committee on this issue, it would, be really careful, make sure you recommend the warning and you talk to them ahead of time and say, look, I'm not trying to DQ you. We've just been given the directive, we should be giving warnings here and going through the process. And
I wouldn't even talk about the directive. I don't think you need to talk about the directive. I think you just need to say, we're interested in making sure that it's easy for the race committees to do their job for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
It occurs to me that perhaps there should be more communication with the sailmakers to say, this has been an issue. I mean, Mr. Duggan should do it and say, we are increasingly having problems identifying this. Please make your customers aware of that.
That has already happened.
Then the sailmakers will add a clause in their contract that says, if you have to come back here to fix the numbers because you're not in compliance with XYZ, it's going to cost X.
It's on you.
Whether the sailmakers decide to do that last part is up to them, but the sailmakers have all been spoken to by Tom Duggan, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we know that. And Tom knows we're having this discussion tonight because I sent him a little note and told him, and I can give him a call tomorrow, or one of us can, to talk about how this went with this group, because we're the group that's going to hear this I suspect it won't just be Dean and Fields and whomever Dean mentioned that will be hearing something like this, but I think it is going to come before us. And why would you want to treat our race committee folks badly? Yeah. No sailor in their right mind wants to offend the PROs. We want to make their lives as easy and pleasant as possible. And I like being scored correctly myself.
May I quote you on that, Nancy?
Did I like being scored correctly? Yes.
No. Treating your race committee. May I quote you on that?
I heard that. I heard that.
That's Nancy Glover, true friend of the race committee.
True friend of the race committee.
I'll attest to that.
Yeah, we got the email you're talking about this morning.
As their judge.
Yeah. No, we got the email that you're talking about that you guys got this morning. I got it yesterday at our race committee chairman, got it yesterday. We've already had a conversation about it. So, you know,
Right. For those who don't know, Paul, he's the chief judge of Columbia Yacht Club in Chicago. So lots of racing. I think that the sailmakers are gonna, I don't think anybody is doing this on purpose. I don't think there's really any benefit to a sailor to have illegible sail numbers, but we know they can be difficult to read, and who would want that? I think Tom Duggan's heart is in the right place, which is let's get boats. The interest in the best interest of the sport is that people get scored correctly, and we don't have to go to redress on this.
yeah. And it would be nice if somebody would send out, you know, their sample NOR and, you know, SI regarding this, if they're going to add something.
Well, that's easy to do. I can send you what we put in for
Oh, that'd be
compliance to help.
Well, in general, we don't want to repeat a rule in a document. This would be.
Well, I
repeating a
know
rule,
that's
so-
that's sacrilege, but sometimes so yes, you can repeat it if you want to assign a DP to that rule. And that's what we do.
Yeah, if that, well, it sounds like, Dean, that's the way you're handling this and your events, and
yeah,
that's one way to handle it.
To Daryl's point, I think it's fairest to the competitors to put in the NOR that, you know, there's going to be attention paid to this so that they know before they register that if they need to fix their sail, they will. And
you don't
really
need
need
to
do you really need a discretionary penalty for G4? Because G4 says you can give a warning or some other.
You don't need to put DP on it because G4 automatically is discretionary.
That's
so it doesn't need to be in
but
the NOR.
I actually suggested that that it's make it NP, which gives you a reason to put it in the NORs. That it's, you know, it can't be protested boat on boat. It can only be protested by the committee essentially, or you know, by a committee.
That's okay.
So
I think-
JP, I got one quick question.
Yeah.
What about certain one design classes that assign, or excuse me, not assign, but award maybe like gold and silver type at least insignias for their class for winning certain levels of events that may not contrast.
I don't. So it says that the letters and numbers need to be the same, not the insignias.
The star class, when they give you those different colored stars, those are in the class, that handbook that is what they call their class rules, that big fat thing. And I don't think that violates Appendix G because they're an honorary designation of what you've won in the past. I would mess with the star boats on this issue as long as we could read their actual numbers. But as some of you know, we use bow numbers for J70s because we do not put sail numbers on our spinnakers, and the race committees don't like that. And they ask us to use our bow numbers.
Right, and they, you know, in the rules about color, they don't say insignia, but then they talk about insignia in G1.3, so they intentionally left insignias out of the color requirements. So I've got one other thing to show you quickly on the forum. And this is this is me really going down the rabbit hole, but this is called a Stream Deck that I use for other stuff at work. But the software here, each of these buttons is contextual. So if I'm going to validity and I press the validity button, then I can go into hail and flag. And if I press my no flag or hail button, I get my stuff there. So that, you know, if you want to go down the rabbit hole with me and buy a Stream Deck, I can give you, you know, they're not cheap and I use it for other stuff. But if you get one of those, I can give you the profile that makes it all menued and quick.
calling other engineers, call for engineers, John's peer group. Chris is probably texting him up like mad by now.
So John, we beat this to death, but you didn't actually show your form, I don't think, of how you wrote this up.
Let's see it. We kind of saw it, but let's see it some more.
So about which one, the sale number?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, hold on. Let me pull that one up.
A lot of time discussing this afternoon, Daryl. How do you get more?
Yeah, I think it said we'd give them a warning.
Right.
Yeah, so that.
I think we gave.
Sorry, that's 3, not 2. Hold on. Sorry, wrong one.
Yeah, we gave John a warning this day. He's been here this whole.
You're not going to get off
been nothing
so
but
easy next time, John.
Yep. So that's what I had.
I gave him until the 25th to be able to fix his number.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. So we gave him, I think it's important to think about that phrase that talks about give him, I can't remember the exact word, Fred knows it, but give him an adequate amount of time to fix it. And that's going to depend on the circumstances that we've got here. We're not really supposed to be running around. I mean, you can make a sale number out of tape. We've all done it.
And look at that. There is one other nerd in the room that owns a Stream Deck.
See, calling all engineering nerds.
Yep. I'm just about to own one. This looks wonderful. Yeah.
All right. This is a really great contribution, John. Really, really great contribution from the Judges Committee and from John in particular to get us a really good, easy to use form. And we're looking forward to it.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John. This has been good.
It's been very good. I think we spent enough time discussing rules that we also better idea of how to handle some of these situations. Thank you while we keep you guys around. Any last questions for John or any of the other subject matter experts for Daryl or Fred?
Well, I just have one comment before we go. That's, the reason I do this is because we all want to be friendly to the sailors and get this done quickly. So, the more you practice with this and the more tools you have, the better we can be at doing hearings quickly and being a good service to the sailors.
Well done, John.
Yeah.
Well done,
nice
well
work.
done.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John. This has been an awesome project.
Yeah, thank you.
A really great project. And if for those of you who you still need to download some things, look at the email that I sent everybody with the login. And John is going to get this posted on the US Sailing website in the judges area. This was one of our final tests. And I think we're probably ready, John. We know people have been using it, so.
Yeah, and during this, some suggestions came in, so we'll have some good stuff to roll out for version 2 next week.
Great. Oh, great.
Cool.
Don't post it until you've made any of those suggestions. Be real. Remember, everybody, from the roundtables we do report back. We have lots of accountability from this group because we get your honest opinions. So John wants to make it as good as possible. So share as you roll it out in your regattas, share with him where you run into any issues. I know I'll be sharing plenty more in the future. It's great stuff, but I'm pretty well. This is the level of optigramma with technology. A proud optigramma speaks. All right, are we done for the evening?
Yep. Good night, everybody.
Thank you,
Good night.
everybody.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you all.
See you guys next year. Some of you, we will, for those who are on the regular roundtable group, we will be having the Tuesday night series again next year. You can send me emails with your comments about how we can be better. Topics in advance. We failed again this year. We've had some problems with that I can talk to you about, but good to see everybody tonight. And thanks to everybody for participating.
Thank you.
Good night,
Thank
all.
you.